And we're live.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to what I hope to be the first of many Hangouts on Air with the Doug, the Drone User Group Network. I want to take a moment just to thank all the people who are here tonight to interview Kenji, and also to thank those of you that are watching, and to encourage you all to join us at the Doug, to please join the Doug and to please donate to the Doug Fund. We're all volunteer based, and so a lot of really talented, smart, passionate people putting in their time and energy to advocate for us drone operators and drone users, as either end clients or actual operators. So with that said, I'm going to ask our panelists to go around and just quickly introduce themselves, a little background, and the day job, the side hustle, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to start with Kris Crispo.
Hi, I'm Christopher Vo. I'm the president of the DC area drone user group, and I'm the chief scientist for Sentient Robotics. We build swarm robotics software and hardware. So that's what I do.
All right, so why don't we move on to Brian Walk?
Hi, I'm Brian Walk, safety officer for the Drone Users Group. I'm a professional pilot by trade, and I have a company called Unmanned Aerial Industries. We specialize in industrial inspection and minor cinematography.
All right, how about Maria?
Hey guys, I'm Maria Stephanopoulos. I work for ABC News, and we use drones on a regular basis to enhance storytelling. So I'm happy to be part of this advisory board for the Doug.
Awesome. Loretta?
Hi everyone. I'm also on the Drone User Group Advisory Board, and I'm an aviation attorney. I'm retired from the FAA, where I was regional counsel in New York, and I now teach at Vaughn College of Aeronautics, where, among other things, I teach drone laws, aviation safety, and other subjects.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much. We're gonna just move on to the man of the hour here, and that's Kenji Sugahara. Kenji is our the Drone User Group Network Policy Director, amongst many other things. Renaissance man. But what I'd like to do is just to just start off by a little background. Kenji is, as I said, our policy director, but he also sits on the Aviation Rulemaking Committee for the FAA's in-air identification drone rulemaking committee. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Kenji, and basically, Kenji, if you can just tell us, really what is it that you're doing, or what is the ID arc, broad strokes, and maybe drill down just a little bit.
Okay, so just as a little bit of background, in July of 2016, Congress passed the FAA Extension Safety and Security Act, and in part, that sort of formed the basis of the UAS identification arc. And then earlier this year, the FAA put out sort of a call for papers along with AUVSI in terms of solutions to come up with how to identify drones while they're flying. And then subsequent to that, the FAA sort of invited individuals and companies to participate in it. And that's sort of how I got involved. I don't know if we want to go into the makeup of the ARC already, but it's been fairly interesting in terms of sort of what we've been doing. I can't go into exactly what we've been discussing, but it originally stemmed from the idea that with the registration, which has of course been subsequently overturned by the appellate court, but there was a need with the registration there was no way to actually see if there was a bad actor or anything flying in the air. Unless you could live catch that person, there was no way to catch the bad actor, because most oftentimes when law enforcement showed up or whatever, the person would just fly away. So that's part of the reason there's been a lot of momentum, so to speak, behind this idea of the in-air identification. And then we just started that process probably about a month ago. Steve? Any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm curious is, wait, am I still mute? No, I'm good, right? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Sorry. I guess the question would be is, you know, you're talking about identification. Is it the identification of the drone or the identification of where the signal that the drone is receiving is? In other words, it's one thing to track the drone, which is almost disposable, and an entirely other to be able to triangulate the operator. So is it because you're talking about bad actors rather than the drones themselves, you know, impinging on airspace or things like that? So is it one or the other, or is it both?
That's pretty much under discussion right now, so I can't get into it, but both are definitely under consideration. All options are on the table.
Okay.
Kenji, do you have an idea or you know, at least a sense for why they're so interested all of a sudden in in-air identification of drones?
Well, it's congressionally mandated. So that was part of the, like I mentioned, the FAA Extension Safety and Security Act of 2016. So the FAA really had to do it, but it has been sort of an active issue, especially with, for example, Homeland Security's concerns, all these pieces that have been in the news. So the thing is, there's also a lot of congressional pressure coming in, which is pushing this process along. So it's not only security agencies, but also the Congress.
Okay. Guys, anything else? Loretta, do you have anything on the legal side to question or add, or should we move on?
Well, I mean, there's going to be a lot of legal issues in terms of privacy, data retention, a whole host of them. I assume it's probably pretty premature to get into that, Kenji.
Yeah. Yep, I think so, because the way it's operating is we sort of have work groups set up together. One that sort of identifies the technology, and then second work group that comprises of law enforcement. We're all talking together, and then a tertiary work group that's actually putting it all together. So that's sort of what's going on, and the end product will come out sometime in September or so.
Yeah, so actually, I mean, I know the you know, you had explained it to us on the exec board, but perhaps Kenji, if you can just talk about the structure of it a little bit more, and how many. I guess I would like to impart upon our audience just how much time commitment you're making to this, and what it really involves.
It's crazy. As you know, I slept on Kris's couch for, I'd say, a good week. So I want to say thanks, Kris, for letting me do that. But what's happening right now, we had it sort of a plenary session that was in June, which lasted about 2 days. And then we had some work group time the next week that lasted for 2 days. The next week is actually, we're having lots of teleconferences in between them. I just had one this morning, and then I have another one coming up later this week, followed by another trip to DC next week for, I'll be out there for 4 days, and then following that, another trip out to DC too. And I have another one later this week. Fairly involved process that takes a lot of time. So. Next week for.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yep. Okay. Were you guys hearing crazy noise for a moment there, like an echo?
Yeah.
Yes? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right, sorry about that. Working out the kinks. So were we able to get that answer out, or I'm sorry, I was distracted trying to figure out how to make that go away. Were you able to get that answer out, Kenji, without getting stepped on?
Yeah, I think it was fine. It's just a matter of the number of meetings involved, which is fairly significant. So that's travel back and forth from Oregon out to DC, combined with teleconferences almost every other day to weekly. And it's just a very time-intensive process, working with a lot of voices. We have around 77 entities or people involved in the ARC. Not all of them are on the same working group, of course, but it's interesting. It's fun. The last trip out there, like I mentioned with Kris, we not only had the ARC going on, but we had the FAA authorization stuff going on too. So it was definitely a crazy week in the aviation sector. So we are not bored, to say the least.
Good segue from my end. Kenji, obviously this is a significant step in the UAS integration to the National Airspace. Who has the ARC partnered with to ensure everybody in the UAS industry has been represented?
So the AMA is on there. We're on there. A-Cubed, which is Airbus, Amazon, AirMap, AT&T. Just to give you sort of a taste of it, there's a lot of security folks, Homeland Security, New York City Police Department, National Governors Association, Los Angeles Airport, Skyward, T-Mobile. So a lot of big names. Even for the small toys, there's the Toy Association is on there too, which is sort of the lobbying group for the toys. But I'm probably one of the only 107 operators in the ARC, so it's great for me to actually be able to talk about my experience as a 107 pilot, because I think a lot of times that's missed out. We don't have a group that's standing up directly for Part 107 pilots. Sure, definitely a lot of the larger corporations are out there, but the small operators, no. And I can give a great perspective on that. So it's very valuable for me to be on that, and also to represent the DUGN, which is, of course, the only sort of drone-focused organization out there as an advocacy group. So I've been fortunate enough to not only be selected, but also have the backing of such a fantastic group as the DUGN.
Right on. Thanks, Kenji. Who could I ask who else is in your particular work group on the technology side? Or is that not permitted?
Yeah, I don't think I can go that far, but there's definitely some very interesting folks who have some very unique insights, and they're very smart, which I like. There's a fear that everybody does come in with their agenda, whether they're coming in from a company or security or whatnot. They have an idea, but we just have to put those aside and just talk as reasonable people. And I don't want to see all these conspiracy theories. Oh, there's only this people, or these people aren't represented. It's a very well-balanced group of individuals and companies. And I think we all have the idea that the UAS ID can be used as a positive step forward to really make our skies safer and open up opportunities for us as drone users that aren't currently available.
Well, oh yeah, I mean, I think that actually segues quite well into what I think Kris was going to ask, and I'll in terms, I'll let him I'll let him talk.
Yeah, hey, so I wanted to get a sense for like what you're advocating for. Like, why is it important that that we are involved in these efforts?
Sorry, I was muted for a sec. The reason why it's important to have a voice on here is because it is such a significant issue going forward. Like I mentioned before, there's a lot of security aspects, and we need to bring up concerns that involve us as Part 107 and recreational drone users, which really might not have or pose a significant risk to national airspace. One of the things that I wrote in my white paper that's on with Area Send is that it has to be context appropriate. Whatever solutions are out there, great. But personally, like I mentioned in the paper, you can't have a solution out there where that's appropriate for something that's flying at 30,000 feet that weighs a ton or something like that. You have to have different mechanisms for different types of UAS. That's my feeling. Just because you don't want to put, say, like a $5,000 unit that tracks something on like a Hubsan X4 this big doesn't make sense. So just ideas and solutions need to make sense, and that was my core idea behind my white paper.
Kenji, are there any other hobbyist groups around the country that are involved?
Just the AMA, and they're not on the technical side. They're more on the integration side. So they do have a voice, and I think it's a very important voice. They do provide a very unique voice that's absolutely necessary to the process. Just like our voice as a DUGN is an absolutely necessary voice in this sort of process.
So what do you see coming out of this, or what do you want to see come out of this?
What I see is coming out of this, well, what's going to be mandated to come out of this is a set of recommendations in terms of how the UAS ID will take shape. What I'd like to see is something that has a light touch on us, low risk operations. If there are more riskier operations, then we might need to do something a little bit differently. But I think from my own perspective, I wanted to see something that's balanced, not heavy-handed, something that achieves the policy goals out there of protecting our national airspace, the people on the ground, and ourselves too, with the lightest touch possible. So that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, I mean, so what you're saying is that there's not really like a one-size-fits-all thing that's going to be imposed, I guess, or that the goal would for it to not be that way, that it would kind of be
like I mentioned, I can't discuss what we've talked about or any of the goals or anything like that. Personally, I've always advocated for a balanced approach, and even prior to this arc, and that's, I think, an approach that I hope is adopted eventually, but I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. So would you? I mean, would this be like a? Maybe I'm going to get the same answer because you can't tell me. But is it more of a solely around national? Is it like complete national airspace sort of web covering the nation, or is it more around airports and infrastructure that, or would that be varying degrees of the one size does not fit all manner?
Yeah, that would be sort of getting into technology and solutions, and I can't speak to that, even though I'd love to. I have lots of thoughts on that. Yeah. But I will definitely revert back to my feeling is that whatever comes out of it, it should be context appropriate.
Right. I mean, I'm even thinking of like when you say that the toy law, the toy industry representative, it's like, wow, you really don't want to have to be on. Do you really want to be on the grid with, Christmas Day when you've unboxed your Spark or whatever, like that seems pretty unreasonable, and is there any other talk around the issues of registration. And I mean, that's a whole lot. I don't want to like go off on a jag, but after the Taylor case and all that sort of stuff, would the hardware required, is that part of a registration process? And again, I'm probably asking you questions you're not allowed or can't answer.
Well, the registration piece is easy because that's not part of the ARC. That's a completely separate thing. So I can go off on that, which is great for me. We've had a lot of discussions on the legal news sort of Facebook page, and it's been great. It's been wonderful debating back and forth with Loretta, who's one of my favorite folks, and we agree sometimes, but that's all right because that's what smart folks do. But it's always good to have reasonable folks on both sides of any argument. And Loretta, I love you.
Oh, wow. You guys have an issue that we didn't know about?
Yeah, no, but seriously, the registration piece, I totally understand what happened with the FAA, and it's sort of the way they went about it was wrong, and the appellate court agreed with that. Right. In terms of a long play, it'll be interesting to see because there is a lot of pressure with Congress to bring back registration. My concern with that is with the current structure, with the sort of registrations being refunded, people asking to get their stuff removed, which is perfectly legitimate and legal to do, is if Congress mandates it again, it's going to be very, very difficult to sort of get these people back into the fold and sort of be in compliance again. It's going to create a lot of confusion. I think there's going to be a lot of whiplash involved, but we never know until we reach that point. I think Congress, when they do address it or they do consider it, they do think about the possible ramifications of non-compliance or a phased approach, just different ways of getting people to sort of engage in the system. And maybe think of different ways too. John Taylor has come up with some pretty interesting ideas that should be considered. Though I might not agree with some of them, I think that they do have merit and should be considered.
Okay, I'm not familiar with John's ideas, and he's not on the call, so so I don't want to air his laundry, and I mean I know that he's his ideas don't always jibe. I mean, it's funny, Maria, you don't really have the this sort of side of the drone world doesn't really play out for you, in the sense that your people are all licensed and registered and by law, of course.
They are, but speaking as a hobbyist, so I'm playing both sides of the fence right now, so it's very interesting. And I think a program like ARC is welcome on many different levels for certain situations. But as a hobbyist, I'm curious to know more about it and to see how it'll affect the day-to-day user. So I think this is going to be very interesting to play out both commercially and recreationally. So
yeah.
Speaking of which, so Kenji, how could we as a community of users, the Drone User Group network consists of both recreational users and commercial users together. How can we as a community work together to help our causes?
So the biggest thing is get involved. The number one thing that you can do to help us out is to join the DUG, because with more people, we have a more powerful voice. And it's not only joining the DUG, but also getting engaged in terms of engaging with our policymakers, talking at the local level, doing what Kris Vo does at the local level in DC. They talk to the parks people. They do demonstrations. They talk to people, show the really good sides. Maria does a fantastic job of showing our national audience how good drones can be. With Eric and Romeo being out there every day, showing these fantastic places. I still remember, Maria, the caves in Vietnam, to being out in Iceland and seeing these amazing volcanoes. It's just a fantastic opportunity to show people that Drones aren't out to spy on you. You're not that interesting. Sorry, but yeah.
Well, and modeling appropriate behavior is important. That's something everyone can do, is fly respectfully, even if it's legal, but you think you could annoy people or somebody might think that you're doing something inappropriate. You don't have to do it. I mean, you should drone respectfully, and I always say drone onto others as you would want others to drone onto you. So I think we have a lot of personal accountability.
I agree 100%, Loretta. It's that gut check before you do something. It's like, wait a second, does this have a negative impact on somebody? And it's also being that ambassador. For example, I was down on the south coast of Oregon, and I was taking some sunset shots, and these people came up to me and said, "Hey, what are you doing? Can I check it out?" and all that stuff. And they got interested, and I had this grandma come up to me and say, "Oh, this is so awesome," but I could never do it. And I'm like, no, don't sell yourself short. And Loretta, I told them about you and said, don't sell yourself short. I know some people who can fly who are probably better than me too. So
about that.
Yeah.
No, Kenji,
just lead by example.
And I think it just boils down to education. I think 100% of the time when we've tried to advance big projects like the ones you mentioned for ABC News, at least, we always get no. They always say, nope, nope. I think the word drone has such a negative connotation. And if people don't understand how this tool can be used in a positive way, it's just easier to say no. And we've successfully done for remotes internationally, big, high profile remotes. And every time we're done, the people that are involved from a legal standpoint in the respective countries and from a permit standpoint, all are gathered around the pilot's feed, and they're all like, this is the most amazing tool. And we actually, I literally have people emailing saying, you guys have changed our life. And I think it's about education. And I don't think people mean to be, reckless. I mean, some people do, but I think because these drones are becoming so easy to fly, safety is often not, on the forefront of people's brains. And again, I don't think they're trying to be bad. I just think the technology has come so far in such a short amount of time that, they're advertised as press a button and it'll give you a beautiful cinematic shot. And people are like, great. But, I think education is key. So right on.
Thanks, Maria. Yeah, I mean, I think that's always been the mission of the Doug, has been to inform and to educate on so many levels. And, Maria, I mean, it just goes on, to sort of the ambassadorship roles that we all take on, and our members, practice from our safety code, and just from being, like, Kenji said, it's sort of my impact on others, that sort of awareness of the situation. That's so important. So insofar as getting involved, I know that Kris, you're working quite closely and are on were you not having a meeting this afternoon, or was that tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Could you tell us a little about what's going on?
Yeah, so, one of the things that we should do as a community is try to identify what are the safest activities, and what are the best ways that we can present drones to the greater community. And one of the ways that we can do that is by showing that drones can be operated safely in, for example, parks. And so, a couple of members of the drone user group have been really, really active in advocating for that with the local county park system. And so, there's going to be a county board meeting tomorrow that's going to discuss some of these things, very briefly, but we'll be able to kind of present our ideas about that. So, we're trying to get in front of as many of those as possible and advocate for us to be able to fly in the parks.
Oh, that's awesome. So, have you selected actual sites and suggested them, or are you looking for them to say these are good places for you, or how is that working out?
Yeah, it's really important to actually have a wish list so that you can say, I think these are all the places that we should be able to fly. They're completely legal, they're completely safe. And when you present it that way, it kind of puts it better into perspective. Like if you just ask them, can we fly at the parks? They're going to be thinking about all the parks where it wouldn't be, a great place to fly, like nature preserves or places that are particularly crowded or places that are set aside for specific purposes, like dog parks and things like that, where it probably would be, there are places that are more appropriate. For example, like athletic fields. When the athletic field's not being used, it makes a perfect place to test out your drone. So there are places where in the parks that are very appropriate, and I think if you can enumerate those and help your park authority understand that there are good places to fly drones, then it really helps.
Now, if I can also just ask, are you suggesting that there are certain times and days of the week, Thursday evening 4 to 7, or is it, this is a designated drone flight area, or baby steps?
Well, I don't want to, prescribe anything in particular to the parks. I basically want to suggest to them that, drones are a great way to bring people out to the parks. And to bring people out to the parks, first, you got to educate the park authority that, drones are not illegal, for one, and that drones are awesome, for secondly, and third, that they're safe, and that they won't, and that drone users, if you give them the right guidance, won't be flying in the wrong places, like above historical landmarks, or in right over or in a place where they shouldn't be flying. If you can give the parks guidance, and you can basically hold their hand, help them figure out what their policy should be, and give the park managers, the individual park managers, guidance on how they should actually, what they should do if somebody shows up to the park and starts flying a drone there, you'll be received much, much better.
What about issues of insurance? Have you come up against that? That's something that we run into, and Loretta can attest to this with me. But issues.
I have a couple of questions on the.
Sure. Go ahead, Brian.
From Drone Factor X, do you anticipate? This is going back to Kenji. Do you anticipate a positive outcome for hobbyist operators in the long term?
Oh, just on a general policy scheme. It's tough to call. Just given everything's in flux with the FAA authorization, I don't know. The DUG, put in our input into sort of the legislation. We'll see where that goes. There's been calls for just to eliminate straight up 336, which I think would be a very bad idea. But these are things that we all need as a community to keep our eyes on. Just going back to the idea of the ARC for a moment, we also have to remember some positive things for us can come out of it. In terms of accountability, there's a lot of sightings around of drones. There could be sort of a verification scheme eventually that says it's not a drone, it's a plastic bag. You could rule things out, so to speak. So there are a lot of potential positive benefits of an ID. I don't know what form it would take, but there is definitely that. I see some things coming in on the chat, but yeah, you'll definitely see that out. One thing that I can share from the ARC, which is kind of funny. Actually, it wasn't from the ARC. It was from the sort of. There was a security summit afterwards at Hogan Levels, and there's three classes of people when it comes to drone users that do dumb things. There's the three C's. There's the clueless, there's the careless, and then there's the criminal. And I think the way we can address those is, as Maria said, education. I think that's the most important key. As with any criminal element, I don't think there's a lot that we can do, because where there's will, there's a way. As we've seen in past terrorist acts, for example, using something as simple as pipes or pressure cookers, anything can be utilized for anything. And that's one of the things that we want to make sure that the folks in the ARC remember is take everything in perspective. Drones are a new technology. Sure, they could be used for bad, but so can trucks. So just to make sure that people have that balance in perspective, and that's one of our duties as DUG members, to ground that conversation and say, hey, take a step back. You can use anything to do anything. So let's hold on and make sure we have a balanced approach. So yeah.
Sorry, guys. Okay. I'm trying to watch a few screens at once here. So thanks, Kenji. We have a question from Dave Thurlow, who's a good friend. He's asking about what are the goals for growing the DUG advocacy efforts, raising funds, volunteering, and so forth. So, David and I have known each other for some time, few years at least. And, we've always been this grassroots organization. And we're just recently, as of February or January, went fee-based membership, while we still do have our meetup-based members. So, I mean, in answer to your question, right now our primary focus is to work on our advocacy through the ARC, and to grow our network. And we're working on membership fee, and we're also working on donations, certainly. But the other thing that we're looking to do is to create other value proposition. So like things like insurance and things like legal services. I think we had sort of I don't know if I'd call it an identity crisis, but we needed to kind of figure out how our energy as an all-volunteer group at this point was best spent, and we felt that the advocacy route was very important. And I think the next aspect would be to try and do for other regions what Kris and his group are doing in DC by actually trying to secure sites. Excuse me, we're just right now on a recreational level, kind of wondering about insurance as a viable prospect for our group, whether it's something people would jump in on, and we're just not as concerned about that right now. The other thing that we're doing is working to get our CBO filing completed. We are operating as a 501c3 organization, and we are in the process of filing our paperwork to be that officially. But that is the model that we're following. We want to be able to gain enough head of steam in terms of members and in terms of funding and that sort of thing, so that we can actually hire a few people to help us out, even on a part-time basis, where we could hire a webmaster and hire someone who could do sort of PR writing for us and things like that. So we're looking for your help so that we can some of the pressure and some of the weight can be distributed throughout the country. And I'm going to take a sip of water because I've got the frog in my throat.
Sure, Steve. So quick thing for you, quick correction on you. We are a community-based organization. We have a nationwide presence, and we have our safety officer. We have sort of our rules of the road, so to speak. In terms
That's right. That's right. I'm sorry. To clarify, it's the 501c3, not the CBO that we're filing. Right.
And it's not defined in statute right now. Although in the reauthorization there might be. It is part of one of the sort of bills saying that defines a CVO, which is not a bad thing. I think there should be some sort of structure involved. I did see a question pop up on the Google Hangouts about do you have any researchers, universities and scientists on the ARC? There is, just to let you know, you can look up on the FAA's website, the confirmed membership for the USID are available to you. It's just a PDF on their website. It's pretty easy to find. We do have, for example, the IEEE organization, the Brookings Institution, so a bunch of standards types of groups on there, but no specific, as far as I remember, of any research universities. Just because they tend to be a little bit more theoretical and do a lot of research, whereas the USID ARC is really looking at current existing technologies or something that's very soon on the time horizon.
Awesome, thanks. I see a question here. No, I'm sorry. Well, this Drone X Factor was saying about safe spots that there's a Facebook meetup group that finds safe spots to fly in the 5 boroughs, and he says he sees about 30 people with drones meeting and flying. Well, that's a lot of drones at one time. I hope they're not all flying at once. And I think that actually was his question. That's why I asked how many can fly at the same time. I don't know if I saw that actual question, but depending on what you're flying, I mean, if you're racing, I mean, I think we're kind of tapped out at 5 at this point. Is that fair to say? 5 in the air at one time, 4 in the air is better. And then if you're flying, things like the DJI species, you're looking at how separated you are and how much you're stepping on each other's signal. Because I've seen, if you've got 3 DJI pilots close to one another, your signal strength and your, goes way down. So that's at least that's been my experience.
So, Steve, can I mention one thing?
Absolutely.
Especially on the advocacy side, it's super important that you get involved on the state level. And if, for example, your state has formed a sort of a UAS working group like Oregon has, try to get involved with that. Because the legislature really usually listens to the experts in the field. Otherwise, they're just getting one-sided information. So it's critical to do that. And I, for one, have been fortunate enough to have been part of the UAS work group in Oregon for probably 2 years or so, and I've become one of the go-to people, at least, for UAS issues. And I've also been fortunate enough to be involved with the state parks. Oregon State Parks has taken a forward view of drones are a form of recreation. So they should be part of parks. It's just a time, place, and manner type of activity or restrictions or whatever. So they are not opposed to it. So that's a very good start. But again, it's just engaging with people and sort of becoming the go-to people or persons when UAS issues come up, because a lot of them are clueless about it. They haven't flown a drone ever. I took our director of aviation out to fly a Phantom 4 and taught him how to fly. That was totally addictive. So that's the way to do it.
Yeah, definitely putting drones in people's hands is the best conversion therapy I think there is, right? Let's see. So what else have we got to cover here? I mean, I hear, you know, from other parties, and I'm not looking to you know, get gossipy, and I know that there's things that you can't talk about, but I mean, there is talk that there is going to be like a pay-to-play 200 to 400 foot altitude commercial drone airspace. At least that's what we, you know, people are saying is happening or going to happen. Now, I know that's not part of the ARC, but I mean, I'm just kind of spitballing it as we have you guys present. Is this something that you've heard of or something that you anticipate?
I'll take a stab at it. Yeah, there is in play what's called the UTM, which is the Unmanned Traffic Management System, which is under development by NASA. And what it envisions is sort of a connected universe where you get clearance, automatic clearance when you go above a certain threshold or whatever. And any sort of structure like that, there is a need to pay for the infrastructure, and whether that's leveraged on drone users is still up in the air. But I think that is one concern I've always had, which was actually brought up a long time ago by a colleague of mine, was the potential of the privatization of airspace, which is greatly concerning to me, because it is sort of a public resource, and just having these areas where we can't fly, I think, is somewhere where we don't want to go.
Right.
I'd love to hear Loretta's take on it, because she's been involved in this for so long in terms of airspace. So,
well, the privatization issue is something that's really happened all over the world, but I think the U.S. has a very different situation for many reasons. And right now, the bill that's before Congress really puts control of the airspace in the hands of the airlines and lobbying groups. I've never seen a statute that gave to AOPA or NBAA or a group like that the authority to pick the people that are going to be on the board of directors. So I have a big problem in the US with the whole idea of privatizing control of the airspace. Now, if it get out of the FAA and doing a governmental corporation, but having a private, even a not-for-profit, I think is going to lead to winners and losers, and the winners are going to be the airlines, and the losers are pretty much going to be everybody else. I really don't see privatization happening, given the fact that the Senate is totally opposed to it. I'm not as, I don't see pay-to-play coming anytime soon, although they've talked about it for years and years and years, even with the airlines and GA and stuff like that. So, but it's only something to stay on top of, because it could happen. And we want to make sure that recreational flyers don't pay a disproportionate amount. Small businesses don't pay a disproportionate amount. So it's definitely something that the DUG would be well advised to stay on top of.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of the sort of positives and negatives, and Loretta, you mentioned the winners and losers. I mean, is it feasible to say or to think that in the not too distant future that there will be sort of airspace limitations between between recreational users and commercial users? In other words, would we be limited, say, as recreational, DUG users, recreational users, we can't go above 200 feet in certain airspace because that's airspace set aside for commercial drone operations. We're going to start, are we going to be, and I'm kind of, maybe I'm getting my Jetsons on a little bit, but, are we looking at sort of drone highway, in the sky and, addressable pathways, sort of, almost like what we have for commercial aircraft in terms of, honing in on signals and things like that?
I think it's a definite possibility. Certainly something that Amazon had advocated for. I think it's something to stay on top of, because I think they're going to have to segregate airspace, and there's only so much airspace. And I think in the future we're going to see a lot of drones acting as air carriers, carrying cargo, if not people. So it's going to be a very different situation than what we see today.
Yeah. So
to be clear, though.
Go ahead, Kris. Yeah.
Yeah. To be clear, though, on Amazon's advocacy in these efforts, they've been interested in creating an airspace specifically for like autonomous vehicles, and then everybody else, like to separate autonomous and everyone else. But I think what they really mean is Amazon and everybody else.
So from my perspective, I think what's going to happen is a lot of it will depend on the capabilities of your UAS. For example, if you have sense and avoid capabilities, that might allow you to fly in that higher reaches. But if you have nothing, where you don't have that sense and avoid capability, that you might be restricted to something lower. I foresee that as a big possibility just because it's preventing collisions in air, which would create a danger to people on the ground. That's a primary concern, because of course it's the people that matter. So if anything does come of it, I think it'll take that structure where if you want to be in that higher reaches, you're going to have some sort of either clearance or sense and avoid capability.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting to kind of project here. I really think it's just a matter of time in some ways where this will be just the way things are. It's sort of like my kids don't remember a time before there was cell phones, right? And I remember analog everything, LPs and books and all that sort of stuff. What's that? Clocks, right? Watches, right? Exactly. So it also it's going to be a generational change as well. I think you see as even like the admirals age out of the military, that when the nuclear submarines are completely autonomous and there's 3 people on board, just kind of making sure the computers are running. That's kind of where we're headed. I have to think. Well, we're about 5 minutes out, so I want to just go around and see if there's anything else that we want to cover.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kenji.
Okay. So, Maria, this question is for you. So, over the past year or so, have you seen public perception change about drones? And do you see that any sort of movement on the media side as they start adopting drones for their own usage? Have you seen sort of a change in their messaging? Because it's always, from my perspective, seemed like a sort of fear drones type of perspective, whereas you've been very welcoming the other folks in the industry.
And it's hard because at the end of the day, they're still a news organization and they will always report on newsworthy stories. It is very frustrating when as drone was close to an airplane and you find out it was indeed a plastic bag, like I believe almost all of them have been in the past. But that said, it's something that people are getting more used to seeing. And I know initially when we were doing our first big remote 2.5 years ago in Iceland with Eric Chang, I had one of our high-level executives say, I don't know why we're pursuing this. This is a fad. And I knew when I got back from that remote that this was definitely not a fad. And it was a way, at least in my industry, to show viewers at home a place where no other camera can access or no other person can access. And I think slowly, as we got more comfortable with how to use this technology, you, I believe, can see that news outlets have been using them on a regular basis. I know Good Morning America is using a drone tomorrow on a beach in New Jersey. And I feel like 2 years ago, they were almost afraid of it. They didn't know how to use it. We had a saying internally that we weren't just going to use it to say we were using a drone. There had to be a reason for it. And I feel very proud of how far we've come. And I know that us and other media outlets have been on the forefront of pushing this new technology in a positive light. Having said that, I don't think any of us will really change the fact that a newsworthy story is one. And on that note, I just want to say one last thing. I was very angry when the news broke about Enrique Iglesias cutting his hand on the Inspire during his performance. And I know initially everyone's like, drone, almost kills Enrique Iglesias. And I feel like, that was a very telling moment because it was still very new, at least in my world. And that if you put your hand in a blender, it's going to cut your hand. And that's exactly pretty much what happened in that situation. But, I feel like we have come a long way from those stories, and it boils down to one thing, and that's just education. I think people were intimidated by this new technology. They didn't know if it was really going to be here to stay, and now they're getting more comfortable with it, and I'm very happy about that. So.
Yeah, that's really the sort of double-headed sort of snake or whatever of the media is that they'll use the tool, but then they'll also report the sort of scare story the next, maybe even in the same broadcast, and it's quite funny. But there is, I think, what we're really learning about using drones in cinematography and news gathering and advertising is that there is an intimacy with a drone that you don't get from an aircraft that's larger. You don't get that helicopter or private plane. I mean, aside from catching Governor Christie on the beach, the drone is, I tell people, if you want to know if it's a drone, just look and see proximity to objects. Look and see if does it feel like it's right on the treetops? And sometimes it is, right, Brian? And yeah, so I think that it's becoming a more and more of a indispensable tool and less of a fad. It's not the, I think that it's I always say that it's a way to democratize point of view. It's a way to put a camera in places that you could never before. When I was back in my prior career as a studio still life photographer, I would often find myself on ladders in very strange positions trying to look through an analog camera, and all kinds of contortions. And I wished that I could fly a camera and just hover a camera over my set. Not really considering the prop wash, of course, but the idea of just being able to mobilize a camera and just have it stay, is just, it's almost like telekinesis. If you have the right mind's eye, that right visual way of seeing or thinking, it's a really great tool. And I think that as it becomes more ubiquitous, and we get out of this sort of Model A, Model T, stage, I think we're probably maybe a little beyond it, but it's going to be very interesting for all of us. So I'm going to post a couple of links on the YouTube page. Is there anything else that you guys want to add? I'm gonna post links for membership and for donation. Getting back to Dave Thurlow's question, please give us money. We need to keep Kenji off of Chris Vo's couch for the next 6 months.
I've been kicked out.
yeah. Club Vo is closing up. It's Vo B&B. Yeah, that's it.
Well, Kenji, you are welcome to stay on my couch next time.
That's great.
I'd like to just say thanks to Kenji for representing the Drone User Group Network on all this. It's really important for us to have a seat at the table for this particular arc, because it's an important step for our advocacy efforts and and a huge leap for our community's maturity and influence. So I really thank you for that. And also, I just hope that all the other stakeholders that are on the ARC are as interested as we are in protecting the civil liberties of people who are engaging in this peaceful and lawful and responsible use of drones. So that's my last words.
Great.
Awesome. Great.
And just to reiterate, and before Kenji gets going, I just wanted to they say that the best thing to do is to surround yourself with smart people, and people who are perhaps even smarter than you. And I know for a fact everybody here is smarter than me, and I just appreciate your time and your passion. So with that, Kenji, you looked like you had something you wanted to add, so go ahead.
Oh yeah, you got me on a roll, guys. This excites me to no end. But I got a feeling that everybody on this call and those who are watching, we're all of the type that when we watch television or watch commercial, we go drone shot, drone shot, drone shot, drone shot, and we're all really excited about what we do. And we're all passionate about it. We want to make sure that what we do is right, and then we're doing the right thing. And we want to be safe for everybody. And we have all of our interests at heart. And I can't say enough about getting involved, getting out there, getting our message out there, being a positive force in the community. Because when it comes all down to it, we're the ones who are going to make a difference. Because that drone person down the street who's completely clueless, they're not going to speak up. It's going to be us. The people are watching, who are actively sitting there watching and taking time out of their busy schedule to do this. And I can't say enough for all the panelists here, because you're spending time out of your day, and it's much appreciated. And each one of you have made a tremendous impact in our drone community. And thank you for that from the bottom of my heart, because a lot of us wouldn't be here without the contributions of all of you, and those in the audience too. So just take a second and remember, it's kind of corny, but it's true. Join the Doug and help us make an even bigger difference on the national stage. You can help us make a difference on the local stage, but we need to be there when the big things happen on Capitol Hill. So we ask for your support, and help me stay off Chris Vo's couch, because it's comfortable. I don't think it's the best place for me to stay.
All right. With that, I'm gonna sign us off here. Is anybody have anything else to add before we check out? I just want to say thank you so much to all of you guys, and I'm sure we'll be speaking again very soon. So Chris, you're gonna take care of the take us out alive. Is that correct? Yep. 3, 2, 1. Bye.